Ben Aris joins us from Berlin. Ben is the editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews. It'll be published in at least 11 languages. I reckon you could read them in at least 3 of those. Will you buy it as soon as it comes out, Ben?
Yeah, I think I will. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a good read, I think. It's pregnant, isn't it, with symbolism. I mean, one of the things about Russians, if you spend any time there, you start to realize how incredibly well-read they are and how much they love their literature. I mean, the writers, Chekhov, Pushkin, Dostoevsky, are still megastars even today in the way that, our famous writers are not. And this book, plays into that tradition. Navalny, I mean, one of his key strengths was as a communicator. I mean, he was an excellent speaker. He produced all these documentaries that caused the Kremlin huge headaches, getting tens of millions of views. And so this book, which is, according to Navalnaya, is going to be focused on his time in prison, is going to be a fascinating read. I mean, it's going to come straight out of the Solzhenitsyn legacy, the Gulag legacy. And I think that's why this book is so pregnant. And, Solzhenitsyn's very first book, the one that made him famous, was a day in the life of Ivan Denisovich, which was just a description of life in the Gulag, where Solzhenitsyn spent 8 years after criticizing Stalin. And it was only when he came out in the thaw with Khrushchev's approval that this book was released and catapulted him into stardom. And Navalny's book is basically an updated version of that. It's like he's been in the Gulag. I mean, the prison he was in the far north, the Polar Wolf, that was an old Gulag prison. And so this is going to be the modern version of a day in a life of Ivan Denisovich.
Yeah, funnily, while you were talking, I was literally writing that title of the book down. Ben, how difficult would it have been for him to find the material, to write it, to get the material out of prison?
I think writing it wouldn't be too hard. I mean, just need a piece of paper and a pencil. His access to books and other materials was limited, but it's prison, Russian prison. You can slip the guard a few kopecks or a couple of dollars, then paper can be procured. Getting it out is a lot more difficult. But then again, he met regularly with his lawyers, and I presume that they smuggled it out. I'm not sure that the Russian authorities, want to see or give Navalny the ability to put his own words into the international press. But having said that, he corresponded with several people. There was a letter, his last letter was just released 2 days ago. And there he was talking about Chekhov, and he was complaining that his books from his previous camp before he was moved to the Polar Wolf one in the far north had not arrived. But there's a prison library, and he was reading Chekhov. And again, managed to send these letters. Obviously, they're censored and looked at by the authorities, but they were sent, so you can get some stuff out.
When it is published, and if any of his supporters in Russia can get a hold of a copy, what difference do you think it may make to the movement that he represented?
Well, like I say, the literary tradition in Russia is such that this book will help cement his place as the leading opposition or the most vocal opposition leader in Russia. And as I say, this is why it's so pregnant that, he's going to do a book in the style of Solzhenitsyn, which Solzhenitsyn was much loved. I mean, when he arrived back in Russia in the 90s, when I was there from exile, I mean, he toured the country and there were huge crowds came out to see him wherever he went. And this will just add to his, his kudos, his image. If he does a good book, which I'm sure he will. I'm sure the Navalnaya team will make sure it's a good book. And then getting hold of the book. I mean, this isn't the Soviet Union where you had samizdat, where everyone used to write down books by hand and then pass them on to their friends. Getting hold of the book will be simple. I mean, it'll be online, and given the VPNs, you'll be able to get hold of at least, electronic versions very easily. Printed versions, obviously, are not going to be distributed, but it'll add to his kudos and the respect of the people. And as I say, the people in Russia have a sort of mixed relations with him, mixed attitude towards him, where they didn't really see him as a political opposition leader per se, but he had enormous respect for his anti-corruption work and this general anti-Putin stance. So I'm not sure that people were going to vote for him for president, but they did listen to what he had to say, and they will read his book.
Ben, thank you. As always, appreciate it. Ben Aris.
Pleasure.